Chairman, you can proceed.
Great, thank you, Max. This is Charlie Garlow, Chair of the Environment Committee of the City of Rehoboth Beach. The time is 11:09, calling this meeting to order. First order of business is the roll call. Stuart Martins is our secretary for the day, and we will find out that Stuart is here, as well as Heather Metz, as well as Janet Taylor-Smith, Nettie Green, Charlie Garlow, and any other members of the Environmental Committee present?
Mary Peck.
Mary Peck is with us too. Great, Mary. We're so glad you could join us. And we have two guests from the City of Newark today, Baharef Van Buckold and Mike Fortner, unless there is a third person from Newark. Okay, well, that's our roll call. We've had minutes from the last meeting distributed by Catherine Burgwin. Did everybody get a chance to look at them? Any suggestions or corrections needed? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes. Do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
Great, thank you, Mary. And a second to the same.
Second.
Second, thank you. Having no objection, the minutes are approved. And we will move on to correspondence. I didn't see any correspondence on our agenda, so we will presume that there are no at this time. So let's move right into the business part of our meeting. I think that takes care of our administrative matters. I want to welcome Mike Fortner, who's a planner with the City of Newark. Is that right? And we'll get you a chance to introduce yourself, doing a little better than what I'm doing. And Baharef Van Buckold, who's also with the sustainability plan, as having worked previously for DNREC. She's a chair of the committee that's been working on this. I think that's about how I could describe it. Maybe I should turn it over to you, Baharef, to do a better job of introducing yourself and your committee and your efforts. And then Mike, the same for you. Baharef?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I actually was living in the City of Newark, but I moved actually last year, and I was the chair of Sustainability Planning Committee. Prior to that, I worked for 6.5 years for DNREC division of what used to be Energy and Climate. And as we get into it, actually, when I was at DNREC, I developed that Sustainable Communities grants. And then when I came out, I had the opportunity actually to work with Mike in different capacities, because we were kind of like citizens of the same city, going to the same swim club. And I reached out to him and say, should we apply for this one? And Mike took that task, applied, got a grant from DNREC, and then the sustainable planning and the plan that we have came to be. I want to actually add that I'm also here at another capacity in the state of Delaware. I'm co-chair of what is Green Building United, the Delaware community. Green Building United is an advocacy and education nonprofit organization that is focused on advocating for sustainable and resiliency in built environment. So we kind of covered all 3 counties of Delaware Valley in Philadelphia, and Lehigh Valley. So 10 county, kind of southern Pennsylvania, Delaware region. And there is a group of us in Delaware of architects, our interior designer, engineers, and advocates that work in Delaware to promote sustainable, resilient built environment. It could be building, it could be kind of urban development. So I'm also here in that capacity to facilitate any resources that City of Rehoboth Beach. In that capacity, actually, we are very active with City of Philadelphia, and recently with Bethlehem is working on Climate Action Plan. And again, my countertop in Lehigh Valley are involved with that effort as well.
Do you want to have Mike be introduced next?
Sure. Again, my name is Mike Fortner. I work for the City of Newark's Planning and Development Department. I've been there since, started as an intern, and I've pretty much been there since about 2002. As I've been a planner for that long. I have what is called the American Institute of Certified Planners, so I completed that while I was with the planning department. And as Bahara said, one of the first things, I guess from that, Bahara and I talked a little bit before our presentation, and that I would kind of give a kind of a brief overview of the sustainability plan, and kind of a little bit about the process and how we developed the sustainability plan. And then we'll go over to Bahara. She can tell you some of some more detailed elements of it, and we'll just kind of make it a discussion after that. So I'll try to be brief. But the sustainability plan that we're talking about, the Newark Sustainability Plan, was sort of came about through the first up was a comprehensive development plan, our land use plan. And again, it was a comprehensive development. It took years to finalize that plan. It's very broad, and it includes everything from land use, future land use planning and zoning, and everything about city government. And one part of it was sustainability. And as part of that process, Newark developed a vision called, basically, Newark wanted to be a healthy community, it wanted to be a sustainable community, it wanted to be an inclusive community. And those are sort of the three buckets of our vision. And so with the sustainability part, there was lots of just kind of general broad stuff about our sustainability, that we wanted to be a sustainable community, but there were not a lot of specifics. And so part of our comprehensive development plan was to do a further deep dive into sustainability and to really flesh out more what the community wanted as part of its vision of being a sustainability community. And the comp plan wasn't necessarily the place for that. We wanted to do that as an independent plan. And so once we've adopted that, this DENREC grant, as Bahara mentioned, there was a grant, and so we applied for that grant to do what we call a community sustainability plan. And so what we wanted to do was it was a broad, long-term, and an integrated sustainability plan for the city of Newark that would be developed through a very collaborative process, bringing lots of residents and stakeholders into the process to develop this thing. And the goal was to define the city's vision and its goals for becoming a sustainable community, to kind of reach the vision of the comp plan of Newark being a sustainable place. And so we started out, we had this event in Newark called Community Day. And Community Day is when nonprofits and organizations, church groups, any kind of community group has like a table, and they do it on the university green, and they have a table and they give information and residents come to this. And the idea is to find out what's happening in your community, maybe join an organization, get involved in the community somehow, that you see all these groups in one place. And so for a lot of different kind of planning efforts, we do outreach at that thing, because you can get hundreds and maybe even thousands of people at this event. And so we did kind of an outreach, which was initially just, we're going to do a community sustainability plan. This is what it is. And we did a little interactive thing where you have like little plastic dots or little sticker dots. And we had all kinds of categories of what sustainability could mean in the city. And people chose like their top priorities of what they thought would be, the way they thought the city could do to be a more sustainable place. And then we created what we call a steering committee. And the steering committee was going to help us lead the public participation effort and develop the plan. And so it involved a lot of people from across the community, involved planning commissioners, it involved someone from the CAC, the community, or CAC I think is our equivalent to you guys. It's the Conservation Advisory Commission. And they basically develop ideas to make Newark a more sustainable place, and programs, and that they review these and make recommendations to council. It had WMAPCO, which is our local MPO or transportation MPO. It had the University of Delaware involved with that. Community groups like Bike Newark, and residents like Bahara was involved with that. And in fact, she was our chairperson. And that was ideal, because she helped actually write the grant, or not write the grant, but create the program that offered the grant. And she was a DENREC and very experienced. And so it was a big catch. And certainly if you can find champions like her to be a part of it, that's great for the planning effort. One of the first tasks of the steering committee was to hire a consultant. So we did an RFP request. We got, I think, 3 applications. And the committee reviewed them, and they hired the consultant based off of interviews. And they hired a consulting group you probably heard of called AECOM, which is a very major consultant in this area, and I think nationally. After that, the committee When I helped try to establish the committee, I sort of thought it would be something that maybe met 3 or 4 times, once in the beginning, once in the middle to kind of check on, do a rally, check on how things were going, and maybe towards the end. But they turned out wanting to they got really involved, and they met monthly for a period of almost pretty much a year, monthly meetings, hashing this out. And what they came up with were 4 themes, and Bahare was very instrumental in helping organize this committee. I mean, we had a very vast committee. They were all very intelligent and very knowledgeable in terms of areas of sustainability. And so it was a bit of a circus trying to get people talking together. And there was a lot of agreement, but there was just still a lot of discussion and helping people get focused on this, because we had a consultant that we were paying by the hour, professional staff, and so we needed to make these meetings efficient. We just couldn't have this thing drag on forever. These people had to come to some consensuses and start moving forward. And to a process, we got them to get into 4 areas. The first area was basically we call responding to climate change, which is basically looking at the way we do utilities and energy use in the city. And we're an energy provider. So residents buy electricity from the City of Newark, which we're a part of this program called DMAC, municipality in that. And so the city has some controls on, purchasing green energy and solar and things like that. And we have this in our purview of doing things like that. So that was the first focus of it, is having our residents be able to purchase more green energy. The second was more of a planning element. It's called we plan and develop for all. And planning I think is oftentimes an overlooked element of a sustainable community, but I think in my view is one of the most important. And that's the way a community is planned that enables you to be a walkable place and a bicycle friendly place, so people can live a lifestyle where they don't have to rely on the automobile to go every place that they want to go, that there's other options like transit also, for example. And so those types of things, having a walkable, bikeable and transit oriented community, is dependent on the land use. So if you have say a suburban sprawl type of land use, things like walking, bicycling, and transit aren't as practical. But if you develop in a kind of a mixed use capacity in a way that is both walkable and bikeable, and you have these amenities, then your community can develop that way based on the land use, allowing these different types of land uses, and then you can reach significant sustainability goals in those directions. The third one was we build better and waste less. And this is basically green building. We build our buildings better, more energy efficient buildings here. And then the fourth one was called we preserve nature and reduce impact. And this is preserving our natural areas the best we got. We have 2 significant floodplains that run through the City of Newark, and we have very strict regulations on those, but preserving those green areas, our parks and open space, in a way that makes Newark a very natural environment. And so those are the 4 buckets that the 4 we call themes in the plan. And then each of those themes have a series of goals under them. And under each goal is a series of kind of action items or objectives. It's important to note that the plan itself, and I know in some of the questions that Charlie sent me, there were some very specific things about what kind of like fees and fines and things like that. The plan itself doesn't change any laws. It just sets the vision and goals of what we want to achieve. I think that's a good approach in the sense that the council has to look at these further, and then and that they will develop these programs and these regulations. What we're trying to do with council, since they have to adopt this, if you put a bunch of very specific law changes that are associated with that, then they might not want to adopt it because they're not sure. It's a lot of information for them. Not sure they want to adopt all these laws. What you want to provide them is sort of a framework of where we want to go and the kinds of goals and action items. Develop a program that will help people recycle better, or in that we want to enhance our recycling, if that's a goal. And some of the specific programs that you might be interested in that explore these further. And then they can take those action items, develop it further, decide, and then, because everything is involved, this plan doesn't involve council spending any money. but there are items in there that where council might have to allocate money for, but, and the specifics of that have to be developed further. So this is just a broad framework for them councils to get get people on the same page and moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bahare, and she can talk about.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Okay.
I can talk a lot. That's I can, but thank you, Mike. You kind of framed it really good. I want to kind of say what we went through. I saw your question. It's great that you're thinking about it and you're kind of having a lot of things, a lot of thought going on. So kudos to you to kind of starting this thought process. For us, I want to tell you, it was a 2-year process, as Mike said. And then we had actually the opportunity of having really engaged stakeholders. So we have people from university. There were professors that are actually involved with EV or renewable energy. We had very closely worked with different representation from the city. So we have 5-6 people from the city on the committee. So when we talked about tree canopies or reducing our waste or how is the waste treatment or what our restaurants are doing, we had the expert from the city there to tell us what is the baseline, what they want to get. So it was an iterative process. It was actually, I want to say, very proud of our process because it's very much from the people, for the people. And it was a great example of collaboration of citizen and city staff to kind of get where we are. So yes, and we work, we had people who were expert on what they were doing. So we kind of split out in 4 groups and everybody really got involved and we set those targets. As Mike said, we set up the framework of where we want to go. Actually, at our first public meeting, when we wanted to kind of nudge the citizen to tell us what they want to see their town, we asked them, if you want to call your cousin and tell how amazing your City of Newark is doing in sustainability, what would you say? And then we got that feedback because we wanted to see what people aspire their city to be, what the people want to see. They talk about they want to have renewable energy. They want to have gardens in their backyard. They want to have efficient homes. They want to have EVs. And what we heard it from people, kind of we took it and put it in these 4 categories. So it's really important. I encourage you that as you're looking at your climate action plan, really look at what you aspire for your city, what you want to be, and don't get stuck in the kind of like, should it be an anti-idling or should it be 100% EV? You get there. You get to kind of action that gets you there, but really look at the big picture. What do you want the city of Rehoboth to look like? What do you aspire to do? Write those down, kind of get your head around that. And all of those action that how you're going to score it, if you're going to have anti-idling or not, if you're going to have EV or PV panel, those all comes at what you aspire to be. One other thing that I want to clarify for City of Newark, it was sustainability plan. It wasn't necessarily climate action plan. And these 2 terms are used interchangeably, but I believe sustainability as actually kind of maybe overarching and climate action falls under it. Climate action, climate mitigation and adaptation or resilience are kind of biggest component of the sustainability. If we want to be sustainable, we have to reduce our emission and we have to know how we are going to be resilient and bounce back. So I just wanted to also kind of to put that out there that we kind of frame it under sustainability. And you can see in our plan, we talk about waste reduction, we talk about tree canopy, we talk about a lot of target that each groups came up with, again, as what we aspire to see in the city. I kind of wanted to put that one out there as you're kind of getting on your journey. But the question you posed were very good, and I want to kind of get to them and answer one by one. But before that, I want to ask you, do you have any question or do you want me to take you to a different direction?
Stuart,
One thing sorry, Charlie.
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to go back to Mike and say, when you said, just to repeat, that you think it's some of the stuff belongs in the comprehensive development plan, but was it the climate aspects that you thought should be separately, or the overall sustainability should be a separate plan?
In terms of the comprehensive development plan, just provided more of the vision that we wanted to be a sustainable community. There were some action items in it, but they weren't very specific. And people, wanted more specificity. I can't remember that word, but they wanted more. They wanted us to develop that further. But those are kind of things that you, for the plan, which is covering a comprehensive plan, which is very broad, covers all kinds of fields. You can only go so deep on those. And so what it just says, what the comp plan just said, we're going to develop sustainability further, a more specific plan. That's all the comp plan said really is, I mean, it says a lot of things, but that was the main gist. We're going to look at sustainability and how we can be more sustainable, because those are things that you need to have a lot of community participation in. And the comp plan is, again, not necessarily for that. So the sustainability plan, when we get to there, that is where we get into the more specific goals and benchmarks, but it does not lay out, it lays out ordinance ideas, but the details of the ordinances or the programs are to be hashed out maybe by another committee. Like, for example, what council recently adopted was a new green building code. And so the sustainability plan said, you know, we need to develop a new green building code that's, that improves our current one, which was more of a LEED, we called LEED Light. It's like the LEED, basically we ripped off the LEED program. We looked at LEED, but we made it, modified it to Newark's LEED. And it basically dug into that further and reformed our system. And so that took a lot of committee work and council discussion. And then they recently passed it this last month. And so some of your ordinances where it's an anti-ordinance, idling or whatever, plastic streaming, you know, those, you can have the goal, you know where you want to get to, but maybe the specifics of the policy may not need to be fleshed out through a lot of discussion. And so the plan just lays out, we want to have this type of program, and then it gets worked on it by city staff, council, and gets adopted in a way that's, you know, has some variances to it.
Thank you, Mike. Other questions? Mary, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I guess Rehoboth is in the process of doing a comprehensive development plan right now. And they do have the old one that they're updating did have some specific stuff in it about trees and some other things that were like the green part of the plan. But I think you're right. Some of the more specific stuff, we probably would be better served with a separate climate or sustainable plan.
Yeah, our plan was the same way. We had maybe a tree goal and things like that, things that we knew were in the pipeline already and had been through some sort of vetting. But we didn't want to set like, well, we were going to reduce our coal, or what do you call it? We'll have 50% green power by 2025. I mean, that's something that you need a lot of thinking about to set those benchmarks. And that's what the sustainability plan does.
Stuart, you had asked me if you could get a question in. Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, I think it was Mike earlier on in this meeting talk about, and I've been listening, and some of the things you were talking about trying to include is the health of your city. And I don't know what you were particularly going into, the health and vitality of it, or mainly from an infrastructure standpoint. And you used the word inclusive. And at least I didn't see, of course, it is a very long, very wonderfully written 47-page document, but I didn't see, as the governors for the last more than a decade have talked about Delaware, two of the largest problems in the entire state of Delaware are the health of our citizens. And I didn't know if you addressed anywhere in this about the health of our citizens. And because as we know, I mean, and you also talked about inclusive, and as we've talked about, the head of the governments have been talking about, there is a crisis in Delaware. There is an opioid crisis, and there is a diabetes crisis. And I don't know if you all were addressing that. I've been looking around, haven't seen it, but maybe it's here again. You talked about being very broad to allow people to go further. So I didn't see talking about that. I mean, because one of the things that Delaware lacks is education or becoming healthy. And you talked about the attracting younger population in the future and the kids of the people who live here. So I didn't see inclusivity in groups either. And I was looking at the different people on the groups. You had the ability in a city of over 33,000 people and a phenomenal location near our state university to use tons of resources that we do not have. I don't believe that we have access to. So this thing is extremely well done. But how would we do something where we want to be inclusive, but we would want to include other groups? I mean, in terms of trying to look at the future of our city or our state, um, did you think about inclusivity in terms of minority groups, LGBTQ, the different kinds of state? You mentioned stakeholders. You've got some phenomenal experts on this on your committee, but I don't know that you have that other thing. If you could address that, and also did you address food? Because one of the things there is not in Delaware, there is not access to healthy food. There's not access to organic food and stuff like that. So, and it's a hugely agricultural state. So can you tell us what your thinking was in that
Yeah.
regard?
Okay. So when I use the term healthy community and inclusive community, that's in the comprehensive development plan. Healthy community, what we mean by that is a community where you can live a healthy lifestyle. And so that gets into the walkability, bikeability, and transit. It also also links as a sustainability component, and also links as an inclusivity component. So these things kind of mend together and cross benefit other fields. So if you have a bicycle-friendly community, then you have an inclusive community for younger citizens, like children that can play safe. They can live a healthy lifestyle. So it's a healthy, it's a sustainability, because bicycling is a sustainable form of transportation that helps you live a more sustainable lifestyle. And it's inclusive because it allows people that can't afford a car, maybe they can live a bicycle lifestyle. So it allows them to live lower income. It allows children to live a healthier lifestyle, or to get around well too. And they don't have to depend on their parents to drive them everywhere. So, and so a lot of things like that cross. So walkable, bikeable, transit. You want to have good transit that's, again, healthy. It's, well, maybe not as healthy, but it's certainly sustainable to use transit, and it's inclusive to use transit. And so in our community vision for the comp plan, we wanted to be all three of those things. And we did do a very kind of aggressive outreach. Now, when you get to the sustainability plan, inclusivity and healthy community were not front and center in the sustainability plan, but they have the benefits of it, particularly in our action item 2, or theme 2, which is to live it's called We Plan and Develop for All, which is again about developing a community, the land use component, so that you can have a bikeable, walkable, and transit-oriented community, which again helps sustainability, healthy community, and inclusive community. We did have that our committee was not racially diverse. That's true, and that's certainly a component we are struggling with in Newark, to try to bring in a more racially diverse group of people. They were we did have a person that specializes, Bill Switek, and it's called environmental justice, and his thing is to making sure our environmental impacts don't disproportionately impact lower income. So if we're going to do something where we adjust utility rates, we wanted to do that in a way that wasn't going to impact in a worse way lower income families, or it didn't disproportionately impact. And how can we develop sustainably without screwing the poor, basically, or different racial groups, or what have you. And so so that was a component of our comprehensive plan, and we do address environmental justice. Other things that we did is, like when we did our community meetings, we tried to do them away from City Hall, because so the public would feel more comfortable, because we have a police department there. And so there's some evidence that to our, different kinds, some certain groups of populations might not feel comfortable going near there. And so we try to do it. We try to do our outreach in areas that were non-traditional. So community day, where we have all kinds of people coming together. We did a community center, which would be in our historic African-American neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get a lot of participation? That was certainly a weakness that we didn't have as broad, at least a racially mixed, and doing outreach that to get more of those points of views has been a problem in the city. And I'm not sure this plan was a model for that, but we did try.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mike, one last question on that. Did you, because your thing about bikeability and using other forms of transportation, I mean, we're dealing with a town, we're not dealing with a city. We're dealing with a town, Rehoboth, that has 1,500 people full-time year-round. You have 33,000 residents. So I see a huge discrepancy in our ability, but there's fabulous parts of your plan that we can take.
Mm-hmm.
Did you address, I don't see anything also addressing older population. The reason I'm asking that question is your bikeability, your transit and all that stuff. If we could somehow figure out a way to eliminate all cars off of the 1 square mile of Rehoboth and address the older population so that they can transit them. I'm going to use the word transit themselves. That's not the right word.
Mm-hmm.
And have no cars in Rehoboth and have people be able to, take mobile, really wonderful, convenient transit in all around to the 1 square mile and be able to access the beach, which is our natural resource. And it's our fabulous natural resource. Did you address the older population? Because they like to come. I mean, generations come here to the beach. It's the grandparents as well as the parents and the kids.
Stuart, why don't you let's see if Bahare has a response.
Okay.
Sure. I want actually, Mike, I want to add one more thing is that the food and healthy food was one of the items we looked at it for our sustainability plan.
Sure.
But there were so much things we wanted to do that we said, okay, at this important time, what can we accomplish? What we can start? We acknowledge that our sustainability plan is a moving document. That was our start point. But actually, we noted at the end that there was interest about growing your food and healthy food. That was number one. City of Newark has some maybe kind of environmental justice groups and a lower income, but it's a university city. So we have these educated people that drive EVs. And so it was a different population. We actually came up in our meeting that look at the committee. Do you understand that? So we were cognizant that we are missing diversity in our group. But I can tell you, actually, we had the diversity of religion, and I'm an immigrant, and I consider myself diverse. So our group actually have different religion, different kind of background, different level of education. So we did as much as we could, and we acknowledge that this is a start. And Stuart, if you're looking at City of Rehoboth being this bikeable and having this transit, I can tell you that the translation of that in your climate or sustainability plan is create a subgroup to change this. And there need to be a subcommittee that hires a transportation consultant to look at your city to make it work. But on how you frame it on your sustainability plan, it very much is like, we want to see that Main Street be a kind of like bikeable, walkable city, because that's our vision. And then the action item means, go find the funds and hire a consultant who does the study and make us what it happens. So I want you to understand what you put on a plan and what is the action and how you get it. Working at the Dendrite for almost 7 years and then nonprofit and not consulting, I always tell people, do not worry for funds. My experience, there are funds out there, but they are not good ideas. So what I encourage you is to say what is your vision and what you want to do and go find the funds. And that's how you kind of plan it. You put your vision on sustainability plan, your action is go get the funds, create a subcommittee and consultant. I want to tell you, one of your questions that you sent us, did you look at other cities, look at other one? If you look at, they really look at the Philadelphia one. Philadelphia actually is at its 3rd generation of sustainability plan. They call it Greenburg. And you look at the 3rd generation and you see there is inclusive community, there is talk about making, food accessible. I mean, we're looking at City of Philadelphia. So you look at that. So we look at that. We understand that that's a gold standard to get. And I think, again, as you are looking at your city, look and see who are your, equity issues in your city and what is your goal and aspiration. We knew we are not City of Philadelphia, but we look at it and say 15 years into their sustainability planning, their third plan has all of these amazing things. So they do actually want to see people walking. They actually target their environmental justice and low-income community. There are all kind of, I could say, equity things built into your plan. And our sustainability plan misses some of those equity things, I acknowledge, but it was our first shot and we acknowledge that. So I want to kind of give you all of that kind of, as you're getting into it, put your vision out there, and as you go and get involved, you need to kind of be realistic and see what you can pick. When I was at Denver, I actually compiled list of cities that have sustainability plan. I will send that link to you. We look at the City of Philadelphia Green Works because it's excellent work. It's close by. We look at City of Baltimore. But again, we were cognizant that these two cities have sustainability plan and staff doing this thing. So we kind of look at their kind of work and how they dice and compile different categories. But we were very acknowledged that what we do, kind of should come from us and our capacity. One of your questions was, did you kind of start on some of them sooner? I can actually tell you, like, some of those action. When we talk to every department in the city and we really understand what is happening in our city, we actually took one of the things that was happening and build it in our plan, because we understand that making these early wins are really important. City of Newark does a great job on recycling. They even have garden recycling. They come and get your leaves, but we heard even actually good feedback from people who are running it, how to make it better. We build it there. They're already doing a great job. So we put it there and say how we can improve it. City of Newark was looking at hiring an energy service company to improve its energy efficiency. We built that there and kind of build on top of that. And, again, in every part, we acknowledge the great work that we are doing and build on it, because it's really important to build on what you have and kind of set your plan for some early wins. If you go really high in the sky and everybody's like, I don't know how I can get there, you will kind of miss the momentum. You want to kind of every year we will have quick wins and build into that. And we say we're going to go back every 3 years and update it. And every year we are going to have a report to see how we did. I know I talk too fast. I get passionate when I talk about these things, and I just kind of like, it gets to me. But it's a big undertaking. All of those questions are great. Put them down so you keep them. But when you get to it, you're going to make choices and see which one is really a high priority for your city. You also asked, did you have a rating system? I can tell you that if you don't have the capacity to go write a plan, there is an amazing rating system that you can use to kind of guide your sustainability and climate action, kind of actions or aspiration. It's Star Communities. I'm going to send the link to you. It has actually different categories, and you can get points, and you can be a silver or certified or gold or platinum. Look at it, because maybe for you, that's a good start. And it has actually really, like, you want to get to your transportation or healthy. It has a specific, sorry, my 7-year-old, come here, yourself, is knocking on the door. This is my 7-year-old. She's actually in some of the pictures, we are talking to City of Rehoboth. Do you remember we go to the beach there? So these are the people. We come actually down on the beach. So maybe look at that. Maybe actually, if you guys don't have that stakeholders and that $80,000 that we got from Denver, that's a really good start, because it's a comprehensive program started and tell you actions like you want to improve your healthy community. These are action on it, and you can get credit. So I want to tell you, there are resources that you can use to kind of get to your sustainability vision. But put that vision first. Tell yourself, that's what I want to see in my city. Ask yourself, what is it that when you call your cousin, you say you're really proud because you are now acting on climate and you're sustainable. Put those vision down, and they will kind of pop up that what is it that you're trying to accomplish in your city. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll just take a little bit that talking with your city officials and learning what you guys are doing, you're probably doing a lot of things right, and then building on that kind of success. I thought that was really good what Barbara said. There's a hand up. Charlie, do you want to call?
I was just going to ask.
Natalie.
People.
Natalie's gonna has a question.
Natalie, go.
Oh, go ahead. Nettie, excuse me. You're on mute.
Nettie Green.
You're on mute,
You're still on
Nettie.
mute.
You're on mute.
Unmute.
There
Okay.
you go. Yeah.
Okay. I'm really impressed with your setting up a vision and your organization. And also bringing in stakeholders, bringing in, of course, you have experts from University of Delaware that we don't have, but bringing in more the council members and the citizens, that's very impressive. But we had what we called low hanging fruit with plastics. We were dealing with plastics right before we had the shutdown with COVID. And we were dealing with things that, I mean, it was our vision, but just little actions that could happen. And things have gone from bad to worse in our city because of COVID, and where people were using paper straws or no straws. Now all the plastic straws are out again. And a woman warned us, right? In fact, it was the meeting before COVID. She said, all this stuff about plastic bags, this is coming down the road and it's not going to happen. So it's been like one step forward and 3 steps backwards sometimes. So I just wondered what you all have, if you found this with COVID, but I really, really appreciate your setting up vision. We definitely here in Rehoboth will need to do things differently because we're a very, as Stuart said, a very different community. And, you know, so those are just some reactions to what you've been talking about.
Nettie, I know you to be an optimistic person, and we're going to win this one. So
I know.
I don't want to hear any more of this bummer stuff.
Yeah.
Are there others who have thoughts or questions or comments? Janet?
Yeah, we had looked briefly at the STAR plan and I loved it. I think what got us was, and what is so important to hear from both of you is to start with your vision. We looked at how comprehensive that plan was and went, whoa, that is so big. That is, how are we ever going to get there? But I think the main thing I'm getting out of from both of you talking to us today, and thank you so much, is that start small, build up. I think we've been trying to take on the world at pieces at a time. And I think we need to backtrack. And Nettie's right. I mean, plastics are a huge deal for us down here because we have a lot of businesses and a lot of restaurants and just everything. And we have resorted to plastics being the safe thing to use now that COVID's here. But I think we need to look back again and reformulate and start with what are our visions and then worry about the other stuff after we get that down. So if I understood, I think I got it correctly on this. And I think it's wonderful because it helps us start again and just because we're worrying about how is it going to be enforced? How are we doing? And that has stopped us from just getting it out there. So I think the visions are the most important thing to get on the paper and get a collective agreement on. So
Yeah, I agree. Vision's also kind of benchmarking where you're at now. Like there's probably more stuff that the city and yourself are doing, just kind of taking an inventory of what you're doing. And then,
And I think Community Days was wonderful. I lived in Newark for many years.
Oh, good.
I love Community
Do
Days.
you have something similar?
Do we? I don't know.
Yeah. We have a lot of festivals in Rehoboth and have a booth or something. But I guess maybe those are more touristy. As Stuart was talking about the contrast, the difference between Newark and Rehoboth, I kind of think about a lot. It's true that we're 30,000, but when you take out the students, we're about 15,000. And so I always think we're kind of almost opposites in a way that, like, during the summer we're like a very sleepy town, very suburban, hardly any traffic, and then you guys are just inundated. And so we have the college students, and they're beneficial to us in sustainability, in that they do live a very sustainable lifestyle, because most of them live around campus, most of them walk. We blame them for all the traffic, but really they're mostly walking. They park their cars, they bring their cars, but they usually leave them, at least during the rush hour. So really, we can't really blame them for all the traffic in Newark. You guys are inundated with tourists, and I mean, but they're important too, to help them be sustainable. So when you're planning, how can a tourist come to Rehoboth and be sustainable? And you have a lot going for you, because they're at your beach. That you have a lot of restaurants. It's very walkable. You know, you could do something with the parking to regulate that. Maybe having them park in the outskirts, and then having taken some sort of bus system in. I think it could be some workable arrangements there, so that all the cars aren't driving in. Plastics, how can the tourists come there and not have to rely on plastic forks and all that? Is there something you can do to develop so a tourist can come there and be sustainable? So so there's a lot of commonality too with that.
Other people have questions, comments? Heather, did you want to ask or say anything? Heather, we can't hear you if you are.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I love everything I heard today. I love the idea of the visions, and I think it would be great for our community, or for our committee, to start outlining some of those visions. That's why I was just jotting down some of mine, and get them all out there, categorize them, and I love everything I heard today. So I have some visions, Charlie. I'm going to send them to you.
Very good, very good.
Great. Well, I was just going to say, I love everything you've been talking about as well. I was thinking about taking your plan and just scratching out Newark and writing in Rehoboth Beach. We're done. We're done. Come on.
Yeah. One of the things we were thinking of actually doing is copying your anti-idling ordinance. And I know you were saying that that's more down in the weeds than what your plan is, but you do have one. And so we were curious how that, if you know, or whether I should ask somebody else how that's going and how that's, you know.
That's a good question. Well, first of all, if you have ideas, there's no reason to put them on hold just so you can develop a plan first.
Right.
You know, and so while we were developing plans, the city, you know, they were already doing a lot, and people were passing. We even had a little straw ordinance in the time in plastic bags, and they were even reviewing that stuff at the CAC. And so part of you feels like, whoa, let us put in a plan and then do it. But things were moving ahead. The Green Building Code as well. I mean, that's how we get people. There's already a committee working on that, and so that's okay. The anti-ordinance idling ordinance is something that was developed years ago in the city when it was adopted into law, and I think it was a question about, so the police enforce that, and to my knowledge, they've even as today, they have never written a ticket for the idling ordinance. There are signs about town. I think the benefit of an anti-idling ordinance is to put signs up, and it also gets people thinking about it. It never occurred to me that before the ordinance necessarily that maybe idling was a bad thing, but it does serve as an education tool. Whether the police enforce it as much, they could enforce it if they saw something egregious. I don't think they want to just scan parking lots looking for people that are idling. They don't feel like that's the best use of their time, and there's been some people haven't agreed with that, but you know, I think it's a legitimate that they don't necessarily just want to go around town writing tickets for this, and cops will idle all the time too, so they probably feel like hypocrites. But anyway, I think the benefit of an anti-idling ordinance is a public education program, and if you make it a part of that, and get people thinking, oh yeah, you know, why should I be idling? That's wasting gas and polluting the air. I think that's the benefit of an anti-idling ordinance, just if you feel it's a problem in your city. Charlie, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. My other question might be, of the proposals that are in your vision plan, how many have actually been reconsidered, put a finer point on it, passed by the council, and become part of the requirements for the city? Which ones didn't pass? Which ones did they reject?
Okay, well, none have been rejected outright yet. There has been the Green Building Code that we revised our building, and so that was a big one. Right now, we are working on putting together we call it the NET Committee, which is just called Newark Energy. It's basically a committee of experts on utility purchasing and advising the city. And what they're supposed to do is this committee is supposed to advise the CAC on some just technical matters about utilities and how that works. You should have, I know Lewis has a satellite UD. UD is supposed to serve the entire state. So there may be some expertise that they'd be willing, or maybe a staff person that's has at the Lewis site that lives in that area would be a participant in your committee. And the person we had was basically their sustainability staff person. We needed to coordinate with the university, not so much for their technical expertise, but because they're a big part of us. We want them to be on board with what our Newark planning was doing. And so we had a person there that, was very helpful to us. And UD does their own thing too. I mean, they're like a big gorilla. I mean, they do what they want, but we wanted them to have buy-in. I guess to Charlie's point about scratching off the name of ours and then putting Rehoboth there, I guess that's all fine. But what you would do want is to have some sort of community buy-in to do this sort of outreach so that people are into this, to make it your plan and that they came up with this. And so you can use it as a guide, but in actuality, you really wouldn't want to scratch off our name and put your name on there and say this is our plan, because this needs to come from you. It needs to come from the community and get people excited about it. So wherever means you can do that.
Charlie, I just want to say one thing. The C grant from University of Delaware actually gets grant to help with all the coastal cities. So again, if you want help, I don't know how many of you heard about the Sea Grant program at University of Delaware. You fall under their categories, and they usually get funding through NOAA, specifically for coastal community. It's usually resilience, but you guys are working on climate action. I don't see why not. So I want to encourage you not to be afraid of maybe limited resources. When you look around, you will find it. And we will kind of look around and help you. I encourage you actually to reach out to DENREC, Division of now it's Climate, Coastal, and Energy, and say, would you issue the same grant you issued 3 years ago, where City of Newark and actually Milford got it, Wilmington got it, a bunch of cities got it. So kind of ask them that you want that, you want to do that, you want grants. So don't be intimidated. There are resources out there that financial and staff resources that can help you.
Well, I hate to bring this wonderful conversation to an end, but it is 12 o'clock and we're supposed to get off by 12 o'clock, according to our IT folks, although I'd like to continue the conversation. However, I do want to thank you so much for your insight and willingness to help us out. And we may turn to you again with something specific, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Yep.
And if I may entertain a motion for adjournment from anybody? Hearing one, and is there a second to that? I think I heard a second there. Any objection? All in favor? Great. We are now adjourned and the time is 12:02. Thank you all for coming. And we'll let you know how we're doing.